Joining us now for his reaction, South Dakota Senator, Armed Services Committee member Mike Rounds. Senator, good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning.
I will follow up with something James Freeman from the Wall Street Journal editorial page just mentioned. It seems like a compromise is obvious to anybody on the outside looking in. You give protection to the dreamers. You give some money for wall funding. Why can't this get done?
Well, because right now you have Speaker Pelosi and the president who have diametrically opposed views in terms of what it takes to get to the middle. The president clearly wants border security, and he wants, as part of that, the barrier. The wall, the fences, however you want to term it. Speaker Pelosi has made it clear that she believes politically that's the wrong move for her and her party, and she is not going to allow that to happen. Until we get past that binary choice, we're going to have a shutdown. And the sooner we get past that, the better off we're all going to be. And look, members of the Democrat Senate caucus voted with us in February. We actually proposed $25 billion to fund the wall, the border security system. We had 46 of the Democrat colleagues agree with us. We had 54 votes in February to move forward with a DACA fix, ending chain migration, and $25 billion available, not just authorized, but fully appropriated over a 10-year period of time. So there is, I think, some opportunity here in the future to find some common ground.
So what breaks that, and why not negotiate this in public? We have a lot of talks that Lindsey Graham has been having with fellow Republicans about putting together some sort of grand compromise. But what changed? Why the resistance? And will President Trump eventually come out and offer this publicly to the Democrats, shine a spotlight on their lack of willingness to act?
I think the president has pointed out that right now the issue of DACA and whether or not President Obama had the ability to even offer this DACA fix in the first place, that's before the Supreme Court, and he feels very strongly that the president did not have the authority to even make that offer, and I think he wants to see that resolved. But on the other side, right now, Speaker Pelosi has made it clear that this is a political decision being made, and that she believes very strongly that when they took over the House, part of the message was the president does not get his physical barrier, he does not get his wall. And that's what it's come down to right now. It's become a political issue for 2020.
But it makes it sound like what you just said about the DACA fix. If the president is waiting for that to work its way through the court system and to have the high court rule on what President Trump did for President Obama did for the Dreamers, that makes it sound like that will not be a bargaining chip used by this White House at all.
At this point, I think that's a fair assessment. The president was in our conference yesterday, and one of our members brought up that possibility. I personally think it's good for the country to get past the issue and to actually find a way to fund the wall without taking it out of Department of Defense resources. We're in the middle of a near-peer competition with both Russia and China, and taking any resources away from the Department of Defense specifically for border security means that that's going to short another project out there. And if we're going to fund the wall, if we're going to fund the barrier, we should find additional resources. And Senator Inhofe, who is chairman of the Armed Services Committee, actually is the prime sponsor, and I'm a co-sponsor on the Wall Act, in which we've actually found a way to fund over the next 10 years at the rate of about $2.5 billion a year, full funding for that wall. And one way or another, I think we should have a border protection system, a border security system in place. I'm agnostic as to what it takes, if it's electronic surveillance in some areas, if it's triple fencing in some areas, if it's roads all the way up and down the border, along with physical barriers in some areas. I just think we've got to have good, strong border security, and I think the president's trying to send that message as well.
With that Wall Act, though, you have the likes of Senators Lisa Murkowski, Cory Gardner, Susan Collins, individuals who are up for re-election in 2020. Gardner and Collins, for sure, they don't want to. They're not too keen on passing any bills that include border wall funding. So you don't have all the Republicans on board with the Wall Act.
Well, I think right now, with regard to the Wall Act, I don't think there's any Republicans that are saying, no, we shouldn't provide border security. In fact, I think not only would Republicans agree to a border security, as long as we can get some of our Democrat colleagues to come with us on the issue, so we've got enough to where we can actually get it passed. But I really have not found my Republican colleagues to be hard to get along with regard to finding some way to resolve this issue of government funding as well. I think there's a real desire in the part of the Senate to find some common ground.
But, Senator, again, to reiterate, it looks increasingly likely that President Trump will declare a national emergency over the border situation and use or try to use defense funds to pay for the wall funding. It will be fought in court by the Democrats. However, you're not in favor of that, correct?
It would not be my first choice. It may be the alternative that the president decides, and if he decides to go that route, then a couple of things happen. Number one, it then makes moot the issue of having the government continue to be shut down, which might be a way out of the short-term problems we have right now with the shutdown in government. So that might free up our ability to actually get government operation again. But I think the president will have a challenge. I think it's very clear that our Democrat colleagues would challenge that in court. He may not win that in court, which means we may not end up with a border security system in place. The other issue, if he is successful, is that money is not free. It is coming from the Department of Defense. Right. And once again, we are in a very serious situation right now with both Russia and China. We are not up to where we need to be, and those funds would come from the Department of Defense in some very critical areas that we're going to have to ask for more funding in the future on.
Senator Mike Rounds, thank you for being here this morning. Great to see you as always.